Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all, and welcome. Just as a reminder, this is a town board workshop, so we're gathering everything that's in this book from Dan and from his firm Colliers. We will be scheduling a subsequent meeting at some point where we'll take your input and questions. We're here tonight to gather all the information so we can talk amongst ourselves about and digest it all. So at this point, Joe, you're going to take care of this tomorrow night, right? The 284?
Yep.
And I'm going to turn it over to Joe to introduce.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So is there anyone here not coming because of Killeen Road? Right. Yeah. We all know why we're here, right? So a while ago, we hired Colliers Engineering and Colliers gave us this draft report, which we're going to discuss tonight. Some of the findings in the report show that Killeen Road suffers from poor drainage. Killeen Road suffers from, there's no crown on the roadway, among other things in the report. And there's boring samples were taken. Bedrock exists at a depth to where it prohibits drainage properly, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what we're going to talk about today. So Dan Farnan from Colliers, and do we have anybody else we want to introduce?
Yeah,
okay, sure. All right, so I give Dan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, Dan Farnan. I'm an engineer with Colliers Engineering and Design. With me tonight, I also have Pat Mulkern, who's another engineer who helped with this project. And basically, kind of go through an intro. And excuse me, you're good, but just to kind of
so you could fit.
Yep. So for the agenda tonight, the items that I wanted to go over is just a quick overview of what we did as far as this project, what our findings were, our recommendations to the board of how to take the next steps, what the next steps are.
I'm actually going to move because I can't see. Sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just going to move because I.
Gary, why don't you move down?
We'll also go through the design alternatives that we came up with. Basically, those are the fixes that we're going to suggest. Costs of what each one of the alternatives should come in at. Possibilities for funding for the board to consider. And then we would have a discussion with the board on any items that they wanted to go through in more detail, being that this is a workshop for the board. And then at the very end, there is another project which we just wanted to give a very brief update for an application for funding on Oak Summit Road. So we'll go through all of those items. So for our review, basically what we did this past year, starting in spring and through summer, our firm made a number of site visits out to evaluate the whole entire road corridor, all 3.25 miles. We started at the north end and moved down to the town line between town of Washington, Unionvale at the southern portion. Because we went that way, sometimes when I speak, or maybe it even shows up in the report, I kind of say our beginning is at the north, and then the end of the project is the southern portion. We had our geotechnical evaluations done in late summer and fall, and then the draft report was put together in November. And then throughout that whole entire process, we had a number of conversations with the highway superintendent and other members of the town as we were going through this process. So right to the findings of our report. The main issue here, would you mind just moving that over a little bit? Thank you. The main issue here is drainage. It's the number one thing that's going on with the road. Having water on a gravel road like this and having no relief for that water to get off the road as fast as it possibly can, that's how the road gets damaged the most. There are other issues, but as we went through the evaluations, the number one thing we saw was drainage. And that involves water that is coming off of adjacent properties onto the roadway. And it is also the water falls onto the roadway trying to get off of the road, but can't find a good path. So it travels the length of the road, it builds up speed, it erodes away the gravel that's there, and then it deposits somewhere where it can find relief. So that's the number one issue that we saw. These are just a couple pictures that are in our report showing examples of there's ponding. It's hard to see, I do apologize. There's water ponding here. This along the edge is all of that erosion where the shoulder of the road is sloughing off. The next issue that we had noted was the wear and tear. There are a number of vehicles that are obviously driving down this road that are very heavy. And there were a number of areas with rutting that we noticed. And you can somewhat see a pattern through here. Some of the pothole areas that are more in the middle of the road we're attributing to some of that heavy traffic. And that's not passenger vehicles. That's anything that is just a larger vehicle, anything from a garbage truck to dump trucks to if there's anything larger that's traveling along that road, they do have the ability to really damage the road over time. The next issue is the geometric limitations. Everybody here and everybody who's on Zoom who is from the town who's driven the road knows that it is a windy road. It is an old road. It's the original, whatever the farm path was that everybody followed and eventually became a road. So it's not built like some of our bigger, it's definitely not an interstate, it's not the county roads. There are windy curves, there are areas where the road narrows down. We took measurements and found that in its largest area, the road is about 25 foot in width, and in its narrowest area, it's about 16 foot, and that's a generous 16 foot. So, and that's barely enough for 2 8-foot lanes. It's basically a 1-lane road when it narrows down at that section. And some of the other indicators for this limitation, the limitations are indicators for another issue as to how much right-of-way width the town owns, especially when the road narrows down to 16 foot, how much control you have over a widening of the road or adding more frontage in some of those areas. The next item was the soil conditions. And what we're showing here, we did soil borings through the whole entire corridor, all 3 miles. And what I'm calling the end of the project. This is the southern portion of the road. This is the town line between Town of Washington, Town of Unionvale, and the county road here. This area is a hill, and it is also the same area our geotechnical evaluations found the worst underlying soils, the foundation of the road. The materials here are really poor for road foundations. So what can be expected is a lot of frost heave, areas of the road that might give out. I believe there is some historical evidence of this area having had road failures. This is some of the data that came from the borings that we had done. The biggest thing that we zeroed in on is there was one boring in this location that had 73% of the material is what we call fines, and that's engineering speak. What that basically means is it's silt and it's clay. And silt and clay in temperature differences, if freeze-thaw cycle, you get a lot of upheaval. It will heave, it will do settlement, and it's also a softer material, so it's a lot easier to give out. And if you think of foundations, you want your foundation of your house on something strong. You want the foundation of your road on something strong, and that area is a very soft area, so it's expected to have issues. Other portions of the road that weren't shown here, they were right at the threshold of what we were prepared to call poor soils. Very close. They did fit within the parameters of being fair, okay foundation, but very close. So the moral of the story here is the soils that the road is on are just not the best for any kind of road foundation. and it means that it's just something you have to live with. You can't choose the soils that you have. The road is where it is, so we just have to find ways to mitigate any issues over time through proper maintenance and the way that the road is constructed. The next one should be our just examples of structural deficiencies. Again, through a number of site visits during the spring and, during the summer months for these, we noticed areas of the road settling. We noticed some collapsed culverts. The next few pictures are going to show, again, the rutting and the potholing. And another item that we had noted on the next picture here, there's a number of areas, or on the next slide, yeah. There we go. There's a number of areas where it's a little hard to see here. I'm going to just stand. What this is showing is the shoulder of the road. There's a line right here you can barely see. That shoulder is higher than the edge of the road itself. So any of the water that gets onto that road, it has nowhere to go. It stays in the shoulder of the road. It goes in and out of the page here, which then allows it to erode away the edges of that road, and then again it deposits in it somewhere on a property nearby, and it's a failure, so it has to be repaired. So those are a lot of the structural deficiencies that we had noticed. Before going on to the next slide, in our report we did what's called a PACER rating. PACER is an abbreviation, acronym, thank you, not abbreviation, it's an acronym. But the rating system is for gravel roads. It's a rating system 1 through 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, a brand new road. After going through our evaluation, our rating for this road is a 2, and it was mostly determined a 2 because of the lack of drainage. There's just nowhere for the water to go, and the lack of a crown which pushes that water off the road. Other reasons why it was rated that way is the potholes and the rutting was more than 25% we had noticed as we went through the area. So in saying this, my understanding of the history of this road, we were there in summer when we did this evaluation. That's probably the good season for the road.
For sure.
So,
This summer.
yeah, so we weren't here for winter. I could understand winter, any thaws, and then probably in spring is the early spring anyway, is the worst time for the road. And our evaluation took place after that, and these are all the things that we noticed. So we fully understand. We saw it at the good time. It's not so good some of the other times. All right, next should be our recommendations for the board to consider.
I just have one question. You said more than 25% of the road?
As we go through,
Okay.
as we go through, you take a look at the road. Is it in pristine condition? Does it have any of the deficiencies that we noticed? And as we went through, we noticed a lot of rutting. We noticed a lot of areas along where the wheel travel path is,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of, basically the wheels are digging it out. There's water that gets stuck in there. There's potholing, things like that. And it is an estimate whether or not it is truly measured at 25% or greater. We would have to do a survey of that, but based on just walking the whole entire road, it's over 25%, which triggered that. It helped trigger the rating. The main reason for that rating is the lack of drainage, but it's another attribute to it.
Yeah, excuse me, but from what you described, it sounds like where you're rated during the non-prime season, it would probably more approximate a 4 rating.
It may be, again, I didn't witness it. I'd have to witness it and go through that evaluation. I'm sure everybody here has witnessed it, and yeah, it probably is. Yeah, so you're right. During my rating, during the summer months, that rating is a 2. Okay, so the recommendations, again, I'm sorry for being cut off here, but these are for the board, the next steps. The first is to consider all the alternatives for repair and reconstruction that we put together, and then basically work to select them. And once that preferred alternative is selected, we can then go finish our work, which involves putting together the conceptual plan of how the road would be repaired based on the alternative chosen, a more detailed cost estimate of what that would entail for the town's consideration, and a couple other things to basically file that report and hand that to you so you have something to work on for programming a project. To help with the design of a future project, the next two items that are on the list, doing a survey and determining the right-of-way, everything that the town owns and anything that the town doesn't own, so that any design understands where we can work, where we can't work, if there's the need for an easement, if there's the need for a purchase of land. We need to know what we're working with, basically. And right now, we don't have any mapping that shows through the whole entire corridor all of what the town owns. We can take an estimate, but if you're going to put a project together and pay for it, you have to know where that boundary is. So that information helps. The other item that helps is a traffic study, which is actually a pretty easy item. The design needs to know the amount of traffic that's on the road, the number of trucks that are on the road. Some of the design parameters are figured out from that. So that would be another step to take. And then from there, you take the preferred alternative, you put it together in a design, and you move to construction to get it built. The last item that we had mentioned is post and permit. The road is currently posted at 10 tons. But from our evidence, what we couldn't find is whether or not there is a permit process for any vehicles that are above that 10 ton, and if there's any sort of repercussions should vehicles that are above the 10 ton be on it. Thing to consider is that when the road is rated, whether it be 10 ton or possibly something more after repair, any vehicles that are greater than that could potentially damage the road. So that's your infrastructure. It has to be protected. We're just recommending one mechanism to at least help with that. Might be coming up with a permitting program for anything heavy, extremely heavy for the road.
Yes, wouldn't that penalize the people that live on the road if you then can't get oil delivery when you want it, or things like that? I mean, that's something that I think is a great concern to the residents who actually want to not have their lives constantly.
I gotta defer as to how many go back and forth. I apologize, but just to do the process.
Yeah, we're gonna, just to please understand, we just want to keep this as an informational meeting tonight, please, so we can get through it, and then we'll come back to you with some hard questions and answers, hopefully.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so those are the recommendations to consider for the town. And again, I should say, these are just for consideration. It's not anything that every choice has to be moved.
When you rated the road, you basically rated it in, quote, the best season. So you rated it as a 2 on a scale of?
That system is a scale of 1 to 5. 5 is basically brand new built road, and 1 is extremely poor.
Okay, so in the best of seasons, we rated it as a 2. We know that the seasons deteriorate both on either side of that spectrum. So we're looking at, we're pretty poor in the other seasons, below 1.
I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
The truth of the matter is, if I were to go out there now, if there are deficiencies that are greater than what we witness now, and then other historical information that I know has occurred, but those items have been repaired, it's very possible it dips down into the 1, it stays in the 1 for most, and that just
For
means
most of the
it's
season. Correct. Okay.
So.
Another question. In your report that you supplied under projected alternatives, you do delineate under repairs certain address numbers where certain things would need to take place. For instance, gravel surface running near 596, 452, 430.
Right.
So you went the extent of the whole road, looked at all of those driveways, looked at all of the culverts and the drainage and the pitting and everything.
Yep.
And you basically categorized each of those sections into what you feel are minimum repairs all the way up to the extreme alternative 5.
Yep, and I can explain that a little bit more. There is rutting in other areas that when a topping stone is put and the grading is done through the whole entire corridor, those rutted areas would be repaired. The ones that we identified there in front of the addresses, and the addresses are only used as just easy indicators. As you're driving the road, it's just easy to take a look at the mailbox and be like, okay, I'm at this address, from this address to the next address. The exact location probably varies 10, 20 feet for the actual start. Those items as spot repairs in our report are the worst areas, where something more than just a simple grade
Okay.
might be needed.
Okay.
So there is rutting that's in other areas that when the road gets graded with a topping stone, that with normal maintenance, those ruts will.
Okay, another question. When you assess the drainage during a storm, obviously the driveways conduct that water specifically downhill into that, and then it flows downhill to the north side. Did you notice, or were you able to assess natural drainage from some of those fields that are there, that basically are sloped on either side of the road, and then obviously add to the flow of water coming down through there?
Yeah, one of our visits was, that Pat actually made the visit, was during a rainstorm to take a look at the actual flow of water while it was raining. I believe, Pat, there were a few areas where you did notice some of that water that's coming from the properties to the side, off into the road shoulder. We know that that occurs. We've also, the highway superintendent had let us know of other situations where that had occurred, so we have that historical data
Okay.
from interviews. And then last, our drainage report, which is in here, also shows
Right.
all of that water heading that way in some of those areas.
Thank you.
Dan,
Oh, go ahead.
the borings that you did, what did it reveal when you, from the base that's under there, from all the years of just
The actual road itself, or underneath it, the road itself.
underneath it?
Oh, underneath it. Underneath it is basically a clay and silt material. There is a few pockets of good gravelly material, not that much, but the majority of it is basically a clay loam. Is what
Just amazing that all the gravel that's been poured on that road and it just kind of disappeared.
The road base, you have an area that is as shallow as 8 inches. And then you have some area that was 24 to 28 inches of the gravel material. So the road itself varies, but all of the area underneath it, it all came up as a clay loam.
I've got a quick question on the ownership of the road. And it may be a legal question for a lawyer or whatever, but I was always under the impression that if we owned a road, that we owned so many feet from the center line of the road on both sides. So even though somebody may have Howard may have a map that shows that he owns into our road,
Center line.
don't we trump that somehow? Or in your experience?
I will defer for the true legal definition of how that works to counsel. What I know from my experience in engineering, what you're talking about is a user road. A user road would be a situation where private landowners, their deed show to center line of the road or across the road, but the road has been there and it has been used by the public and maintained by the public for a certain amount of time. And as long as it meets those parameters, it's classified as a user road, which then gives the town or whoever owns that road the ability to maintain whatever you have there. So if your road edge is the only thing you have and you have no side drainage and you're not maintaining over that course of time anything on the side, your user road may only be the edge of the road. It may go farther if you're maintaining things farther, but it's item for legal interpretation. It's also an item that a surveyor helps with in determining where those right-of-way lines are, and if you truly do have ownership or if it's a user road situation.
Okay.
So Dan, the issue of drainage, the town has to address the drainage issue regardless of what type of service recommendation you make, correct?
Right. I'm actually, the next part of this is to go through the alternatives.
Okay.
We did go the full gamut of on the alternatives, from just basic repairs, which does not address fully all of the drainage through the whole entire course, all the way to what I kind of call the Cadillac, which is a complete rebuild and a brand new paved road. So in a lot of those alternatives, the drainage is addressed. The first alternative, it's just the basic repairs. And that's a good segue to go into the next part of what we had here. As I was just saying, the first alternative or the list of alternatives. First one is the basic repairs, second one, and these build on each other. The second alternative is the first one plus drainage ditches. The third alternative is what we call mill and fill, and that's repairing all of the roadway as it exists now, plus all of the repairs and drainage ditches above. And then the last two, alternative 4 and 5, are the reconstruction, where you're getting a brand new road reconstructed all the way through. The fourth is the gravel road, the fifth is the asphalt road. And to go through in detail on each one of those, the first alternative, I won't read all of this, but basically what it is going to all of those problematic areas, making the repair where it is, so any place that's settled, the really bad rutting, the potholes, making whatever repairs are needed. And then when that is all done, doing any other spot repairs, and then doing a topping stone over the entire road, the width of the road as it exists, and grading so that it has as much of a crown as possible. That is the basic repair. That's the bare minimum. The alternative 2 is all of alternative 1 plus installing, sorry, the picture's cut, but also installing drainage ditches throughout the whole corridor. So you would have to determine what land you own and then be able to install those drainage ditches along, allow for the relief to wherever the drainage can go, and then that helps pull all of the water off the road. It also helps intercept anything draining to the road from getting onto this gravel surface and potentially damaging it. The third option is what we call mill and fill. And so the mill and fill, what you basically do, you're going to go out there and you're going to grind up all of the material that exists. It's going to, there are additives that are put into it. There might be a little bit of additional material that's put into it. When it comes out, water's put down on it and it is compacted. So it's basically revitalizing everything that exists there. If there are areas where it needs to be deepened, like we noticed the area where it was only 8 inches, if you want to get a full section in there, those would be some repairs you would do in that area of the road only, but the majority of it would all just be dug up, grinded up, comes out of the back of the machine, the water's put down, and then it's compacted. At the end of that, there is a topping stone, something that gives it the final surface so it can be graded appropriately. And then again, with alternative 3, you're also installing drainage ditches. So you get a really good a slope on the gravel surface. It all goes into the ditch and it also intercepts any water that's coming from the sides. But I just want to be clear with this. The road width as it is now basically stays as it is now. So you're just grinding up everything that is already existing.
Good question on that. If you let's say you did that, and you would still have to maintain the road. You'd still have to grade it probably once a year.
There is always grade. Yeah, gravel roads, you are always maintaining it.
How do you? And I probably Joe probably could for me, but how do you grade a dirt road and not get that lip on the end of the road? It makes the lip, and then what do? Come along and take that lip out?
If you have the drainage ditches, one of the things that does is it gives you an area along the edge where it rounds over. You would not be grading. It would have to be something that maintenance would have to work on to make sure that after the blade on the grader goes through, that it is not leaving those deposits on the edge, that it does completely round over so water can move from the road surface into the ditch. So one of the things that can happen if you don't have those ditches, what you're talking about, that edge, and we showed that picture, it just keeps building up on the side, and then the water gets trapped in there because it has nowhere to move. So with those ditches, you provide that area that's rounded over that it can then kind of dive down into the ditch with.
I know that I've walked quite a few dirt roads that have, like the riprap stone down in sections where it was done. And within a year or two, the stone is covered up. It's all dirt again, and the drainage is gone.
The picture we showed here is just an example. The riprap that you would see would only be used where it's absolutely needed. The majority of the ditches would just be grass and
Ditches.
swale ditches,
Okay, gotcha.
and then they would have to be periodically, they do build up with silt, they're periodically cleaned out.
Clean them out. Okay.
Yeah, and you would need that anyway, regardless whether it's 4 or 5, or 3, 4, or 5 option. You'd still need to do 1 and 2, correct? You'd still need to do the drainage, and you'd still need to repair.
Correct, they work in,
Yeah.
order. Yep, that's a good outflow.
I'm gonna let you ask one question, but otherwise I have to cut it off, okay?
Yeah, it's just about the pricing, because I get the pricing for these different options, they increase each time. However, what's not in there is, okay, that's the upfront cost, but if 3 has to be done once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, then the actual cost is a lot higher than what is in that table. So what would be projected cost if you were gonna do it for 10 years or 15 years? What's the cost of 1, 2, 3? Because that's gonna be a lot more than just what's in that table.
Very good question. What I could do as part of answering that, is good point, is what are your costs maintaining the road through the future?
Right.
I think what we could include in the next version of this report is exactly that. What do you have to do? What are your expected periodic maintenance per year? And then what is that every 2 years? What is that every 5 years? What is that every 10 years? One thing I did provide in the report, in the beginning of the report, was just looking at other municipalities throughout the whole entire country that have gravel roads. And one of the things to consider is you don't think of gravel roads that much in New England, but if you're in the center of this country, you get off the interstate and you get off of a main thoroughfare through, say, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, you are driving on nothing but gravel roads. So there is a ton of experience and a ton of everything from research and data that is out there, how you maintain the roads, what those maintenance procedures are like, what they cost.
But they don't face the same climate that we do.
They don't,
The
yeah.
frost and the
have to
upheaval and, you
you have to
know,
make
it's a
adjustments.
totally different ballgame out there.
Colorado.
You know?
There are definitely differences for regions that you do have to account for, but what I'm saying is that we would very easily be able to put together not only costs that you would see here in New York, but historical data throughout the country on what you do with these roads. And the first part of our report did talk about a gravel road does not have the same life
Mhm.
as a paved road.
Right.
It is expected
Right.
that it needs a little bit more care, and it would cost more long run because you're doing more larger repairs
Right.
than a paved road.
Yeah, and the part of the road that you said is 16 feet wide,
Mhm.
is part of your recommendation to expand that if we're able to, or is the width not as important as just making sure you have the right drainage on the
You
side?
gotta have the drainage.
You gotta have the
Doesn't matter.
drainage, so anywhere that you would be able to widen it so that it is a lot easier for the traffic, no matter what you pick, not just talking about how the road condition, it's just the safety of cars traveling, any area that you have the right of way to do the widening, you could definitely do a widening in any of these. The last two, which we're gonna go through, alternative 4 and alternative 5, what we propose is a uniform width road the whole entire way. So the fourth alternative is a gravel road built with all of the drainage ditches and a uniform width of it's either 24 or 26 feet wide from start to finish the whole way through. Right, so the section shown there. And then in addition to that, the under drains that are put in for water that's in the ground, getting that out, and then providing the 4% slope minimum to make sure there's enough slope on the road to push all the water off. The fifth and last is, again, the exact same thing as alternative 4, except for paving as your finish as opposed to the gravel as your finish.
Could you, now that you have this chart and the projected costs,
Want to bring that one up, thank you.
could you also attach perhaps a estimated time of projects?
Yeah.
So obviously 1, 2, and 3 kind of piggyback one another. But if you were to break one down into how long would that take, and then 1 and 2, how long would that take together, and so on? Because no matter what is done on that road, it's going to impact the individuals that are living on that road, and they obviously would need a lot of information prior to.
Right. We can definitely do an estimate for all of those. If there is a preferred alternative, we can give a projected construction schedule. So
Oh, okay.
everything from how long it takes to do the survey, how long it takes to do the design, moving to construction, and then what we anticipated construction schedule to be. So we could do that with the preferred alternative.
I know, I assume everybody is anxious for a quick fix, but from what we're reading and the materials being presented, it's not going to be a quick fix, but it needs to be the right fix.
Okay, so on that, the costs which were presented and the table here shows, it is a wide range. Basic repairs are just about 160,000, and then the what I'm calling the kind of the Cadillac, the fully paved road, is upwards of $7 million. All of our cost estimates came from using New York State DOT item numbers and their costs. There is a difference between what a town might do and what the contractor might charge a town versus what happens with a DOT project. We purposely chose the DOT project to show full budgeting, but these are, that's where all the numbers are based from. And there would be a process, obviously, of gaining competitive bids if this was hired out to help with where those costs.
When you projected those costs, based on 2020, 2021, because with supply chain and everything changing, obviously this is probably the base cost. For all of these is probably,
Correct. Those would be 2022
as
numbers.
we make a decision and move forward, these costs are obviously, just because of the economy, is going to be increased.
Yep, DOT uses an average weighted bid, and every time a project that goes through the DOT system is bid and awarded, those numbers go up into their system, constantly updating. So those numbers were generated in October of this past year.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I think the next portion of this is the funding, funding sources. Unfortunately, this road is not classified. The classification is a local rural road, and that is not eligible for federal funding. That's mostly used throughout the state to help situations like that. So finding sources of funding, we have to get a little bit more creative with where we go to try to find some of those sources. Some of the programs that we did find, the northern portion of the road, the drainage area drains to a sensitive stream. It's a Class A stream. It is drinking water. Because of the sensitivity of that stream, there is a program through DEC that awards up to $1 million for a project, which we believe that putting together the right kind of grant application, a portion of this road could be eligible for that funding. But I do caution is only the northern portion of the road. Everything that does not drain to that stream does not be within that classification, so supplemental funding has to be found under that system. The next two items, they are federal programs. However, when taking a look, the first one that's labeled here, when taking a look, there is a clause which does allow for use of any agricultural use of the road may qualify. If there is use of the road for agricultural purposes, there is the possibility of qualifying in that system. And then the grants are figured out based on going through the whole entire process and seeing what you can be eligible for. I mentioned the Infrastructure Act. I think everybody knows that, the Infrastructure Act that was passed in the past few years here. New York State is slated for somewhere north of, just north of $13 billion. All that funding has not been allocated and will over time. There are programs that probably are not fully written that this road may qualify for. It's just something to keep on your radar. There's nothing right now that I can go and look up and see if there's a qualification, but as time goes on, there might be something that is available under that act. The last two is bonding, which I think is pretty straightforward to understand the way we do through municipal bonding to try to finance it. And then the last is discretionary spending, which is doing our best to lobby everybody that possibly can to see where help can be granted.
We forgot past the hat.
It might take a little bit to get up to that 7 million, but yes, that is
Well, we're gonna pass
possible.
the hat.
Yeah. So those were the items that we did come up through funding, and I think that's a conclusion of everything. So for the board specifically, if there are any other questions, anything you want to go through in detail, be happy to discuss those items.
How many visits did you actually make to the site?
Mine was 4, Pat, 5, 2. So
And you've been,
there's-
you started when?
Would have been,
I believe August was the first
for,
one.
no,
No.
for you as well as I met with the,
Joe?
with the town in June, July, and
June,
then from June, I would say June, July to September timeframe.
Did you go, because it looks like a lot of leaves are on the ground in the photographs. Did you not go in October at all or November? Because it
Was that
seems like-
yours?
That was mine.
That was yours, okay,
Yeah.
so a little bit later than September. It was for,
So sort of into the fall too, it looks like.
correct.
Would it make a difference if you went, or someone from your firm went up there now, this time of year, to see what it looks like?
Sure, I mean, based on what I'm hearing, we should make that visit. I apologize for not coming while it was still
Right.
daylight, I could have gone first before coming.
No, that's
through here,
okay.
I recognize
That's all right.
that, yeah.
But I think.
Wait till Friday.
I think, yes, but going at a good time speaks for itself, because even in the best of times, it's not in a good shape.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think he's gonna be surprised
No,
if he goes there on
absolutely
Friday.
not.
You know.
Absolutely.
In your experience with some of the grants, I know some different state, federal, they're offering them at different times, the application process is different. Do you know about the timing of any of these?
Not specifically. The one for DEC, I thought was just an application to fill out and go through. I would have to go
Okay.
back to see if there's timing or
I
if it's.
can go,
included
I'll go
here.
check all of them,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious if you know off the top of your head.
And the infrastructure one, again, I mentioned it because I know it's there, but those.
That's a 5-year window on those,
How
so
that's programmed.
we're
And
talking 2023, you're talking 2028.
Just a question about safety.
Mhm.
If we went with the first 3 items and we had a serious cold snap in January, February, we had a major thaw in the end of February, early March, like we used to have every year. This year, I don't think we have any frost in the ground. Yeah. But even if we did 1, 2, and 3, you think the road would be safe for a fire truck and an ambulance to get in during a major thaw?
Are you talking like weight limits, or are you talking about just navigability through the road as it?
Yeah.
Yeah, napping.
So where I would, as far as saying whether or not it's safe, what I could say is that that is going to depend on how clear things are. That's going to depend on what's on the road, if it's slippery conditions, if it's snow conditions, those kind of things come into play. As far as
But Dan, besides the things that would be any road, right? Slippery would be any road,
Yeah.
so like, if we're just
No.
unique to this road, would, if 1 through 3, I'm sorry if I mean, ask the
No,
question
no,
again,
that's-
but would
no.
you know, those deep divots and difficult passability issues, in your opinion, would 1 through 3 address many of those, or in your opinion and your experience?
what I could tell you is the rideability of the road after those repairs are done, because every single one of these repairs has a grading and topping stone done to make everything even. So the rideability of the road right after the repairs are done should be fine. Some of the limitations, like the road narrows down, making sure that there's enough room for multiple vehicles to travel. I think that can always be an issue. I'll say the very first time I drove down the road, I was driving from the south portion up the hill, where some of the road is the most narrow. And when I got to the top of the hill, immediately I was met by a large tractor. And whoever's property that was, I do apologize. I was on your grass to get out of the tractor's way.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a concern.
Yeah,
with
see,
those narrow
that's my
areas.
biggest concern is that, I hope it never happens, but my biggest concern is that somebody's house catches on fire, at the end of February, and we're in the middle of a thaw on the dirt road,
That's right.
and the fire truck gets stuck in the mud.
Right.
And can't put the fire out, and somebody dies. And that's my biggest fear personally, as a town councilman, that road be safe, because there are few times, not a lot, but there are a few times when that road is really bad,
Right.
you
So-
know, and
So Dan,
Say
can
something
I just
quickly.
ask,
Oh, but I've lived on that road for 23 years with ordinary cars, and there has not been a day that I couldn't go up and down the road, or that trucks with, I mean, that just happens to be true, and I'm full-time, the school bus.
No,
No, there've been plenty of times when people haven't been able to go up and down the road, especially when the first thing going up from, the beginning road from the north end, where they haven't been able to get delivery trucks, they haven't been able to get oil trucks, they haven't been able to get the ambulance in, and they've had the police there.
I live in the
Wait.
middle of the
so I
road,
just need to,
and they go
hello,
We gotta-
hi.
Time out,
And the other
time out.
We can't have side discussions, I'm sorry.
Yep, okay.
So, Dan, back to the Bob's initial questions and Leslie. So, as you know, and as you can hear, the road becomes very hard to drive on after a spring thaw, okay? I've had people come to me and stop, what are you gonna do about this? What are you gonna do about this, right? Because you cannot drive on it. You cannot get a school bus across, you cannot a fire truck. So the question that I think Leslie and Bob were trying to ask, after the spring thaw, if the drainage is fixed,
Mhm.
if at least the drainage is fixed, would that help with that problem? Or do we have to still resurface the road better?
I see.
Do you see what I'm,
When the
does
drain-
that aid the problem if the moisture is taken out of the equation?
Adding the drainage, adding the ditches definitely helps in that situation. Any kind of thaw that you have, you want the water that is on the road or the water that is in the road, you want that water out of that system as fast as possible. So adding in the drainage does help
Okay.
make the situation better. As far as, one thing that was brought up about if the road is muddy, if the road gives out, if there's some sort of a soft area in the road, it would have to be looked at case by case basis. Why is that area soft? Why does it need to be? Why is a truck getting stuck in it? And if a more intensive repair is needed in that area to pull the whole entire section out and rebuild it with a sturdier section of gravel or whatever the choice is, there could definitely be spot repairs like that needed.
I guess what we need to know, the board, is how far do we go with these repairs? You know, like, okay, fine, we know we have to do 1, 2, and 3, we know that, in order for the road to be maintained properly, but what kind of a surface do we need to put down? Right?
As far as the topping stones that we were mentioning, the whole idea of the topping stone is a brand new material that would go up on
Mhm.
top and would be compacted in and would be structurally sufficient for the weight of the vehicles that are going on it. It should be structurally sufficient during a time of year where there's more water, so long as the water is moved off of the road. It has to drain off of the road. If there's water sitting on the road and soaking into the road, that's where you would get the mud, that's where you get the softer situation, you gotta move that water off the road.
Dan,
But drainage will help that.
It would have to.
How would it work, hypothetically, you've got 1 through 3, right? If it's not working, if it's problematic, if we're seeing that, you know, after doing all the drainage, it's not, you still then could go to an option 4 or 5
100%.
or 6, right? We don't have, it isn't, I just wanted to understand sort of, it's not like you're starting at 0 again. So that was one question I had. The second question I have is, are your quotes also including expanding the width of the road regardless of which option? Is it all the 24 feet?
Option 4 and option 5 are the only ones that expand the road. All of the other options maintain the same.
So that would be helpful too to know, particularly if access is a concern in that 16 feet area. And, right.
Another question. After a decision is made, after we get input from the community in a public hearing and so on, as these projects are chosen, it seems to me that there's also going to have to be sit down with the various property owners along that entire length to talk about their drainage coming into that road, their driveways, their culverts or whatever. Because even if you pave the road, if those tributaries that feed that road don't act according, engineering wise with the drainage system we put in, that could all just flood down to the bottom and you got a pond at the bottom of the south end and the north end.
What we would have to do in a drainage design, so any of the alternatives that add in the swales and the drainage design, whatever the current situation is, the day we do that design, if there is a certain amount of water that is flowing to that road right now, we have to design for that. The ditch has to be wide enough, large enough, deep enough to take the water that is coming at that moment we do the design and convey it wherever it's supposed to go. After that point, if that land is ever developed, if that land ever has any major change, there are provisions through the DEC, if you go in Speedy's permits, if you know what that is. If there are changes that trigger those permits, there are restrictions on what kind of water can leave the site. But basically, if there is drainage going in that direction, we have to accommodate for it. So we do have to take a look at all of the drainage report that, the drainage study that we did. We have to take those quantities of water, and the ditches that we would build on the side of the road have to accept that.
Once we identify where, like Mike was mentioning, where the water is coming from off the sides of the road and from properties, we identify where the problems are. The property owner would be responsible for correcting that. Am I right? Is that kind of the way it works?
No, I don't think so. I
No.
think he's saying,
I mean, if the water's coming from somebody's field down into the road and it's been identified as that problem, what?
If that's the natural course for the drainage, and that is the system in which it is draining to, that is the natural way. It has to be accommodated. Where there can be some restriction is if, I'm just gonna throw an example out there as what we do anytime a subdivision goes in.
Right.
I'm not saying or suggesting that this is happening, but say a property on that site were to have a 20 lot subdivision go in. The amount of water that leaves that land before it is developed, whatever that value is, let's just say it's 1 gallon for argument's sake. After the development, it can only be 1 gallon that leaves. But whatever it is today, when we design it, that is what we're accommodating.
So the drain below that flow, we have to accommodate that runoff
Whatever's coming.
that we're putting into the culvert on the side.
Yep, so that's what it is.
And then the discharge of where it goes.
So, right, so the discharge, if there is a natural way that the drainage is going, that is where we're going to be, that's where the water goes, that's the relief, that's where we have to drain to. One of the parts of doing the survey, which I think would be good to take a look at, is I did come across one map. I don't have maps for everything, but I did come across one map where there was evidence of an easement, a drainage easement to the town from the private landowner, or to go off of the road and through their property to a natural stream. Finding evidence of where those areas are throughout the whole corridor would help so that we have the points in which everything needs to drain to.
Great.
Could I ask if any analysis has been done on the impact of paving roads in the town around traffic? Because obviously as council members, you'll also want to be concerned about the safety for our children that live on the road and that use that road for biking and walking and other things.
Yeah, I'll reiterate again, this is just a workshop meeting tonight, so we will address any concerns at a later date when we have a public hearing. Thank you, though, for your question. Any other board questions?
But to follow up on that question, you recommend a traffic study. Is that just a traffic study of current traffic patterns on the road?
Correct.
Okay.
There can be recommendations for what to accommodate, depending on what is witnessed during that traffic study, what is using the road, and how we would need to accommodate in any future design.
So something like speed bumps could be recommended. as
Usually-
deterrents for speed.
No.
I don't want to.
Some of it's for snow plowing, it'd be a little tough, so.
I will say, traffic study would collect data on traffic. You would know the speed at which everything was
Right.
collected through that, and you would know how to accommodate. there's any special conditions needed for whatever it's done.
How, when you do a traffic, do you do does Colliers do traffic
Yes.
studies? Okay, so when you do one, do you often do projections of like speed for gravel, speed for 4, speed for 5, the number of trucks?
If, so
Because would more cars use it if it's more easy, or if it's more easily
Yes.
passable, if it's a, you know?
it all depends on the scope that's agreed to. If there are 100% things that we look at and we would do, if there was a federally funded program where the funding came through, that is a requirement. We have to project out 20 years, at a minimum 20 years.
Dan, if you, before we have our public hearing, if you or someone from your firm could make a visit or two this time, during this time of the year,
Absolutely, yes.
just to get a better picture of what's up there,
Yeah, I have no
that'd be
problem doing
great.
that. I think when we started, I wasn't sure where our ending period was going to be.
Right.
Now that we're in this season, I might as well. And if there are our recommendations that need to be amended, we definitely will.
Okay. That's great.
And also, could you give us a time frame on some of the things like the survey and the recommendations that you have made to us about just gathering more information?
Yeah, do you mean like how long it would take to
Yeah.
do a survey? Okay,
Yeah.
that's easy for us to do.
For the open to everybody meeting, could we also do like a 10 or 15-year projection of cost for those options? Because 1, 2, and 3, as you said, need to be maintained over time. And so I think it would be helpful for everyone to know what would the total cost be for each option, given the fact that 1, 2, and 3, and even 4 may need more repairs.
Again, to keep with your rules, I hear that, and I do think that the town board is looking to have some sort of projection on those costs. I think that's an easy thing for us to
Yeah.
put in. So.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Any other? No. Good. Hopefully you're good.
No, I'm good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
Thank you, all, and I thanks for your patience. We will have you back when we've had a chance to sit and talk amongst ourselves and get some feedback from you. So
And
Thank you.
prior
Thank
to
you
that
all
meeting,
for
I would
coming.
ask everyone, if you haven't read this online, please go through it and then develop your questions from that. And even maybe in neighbor to neighbor, talk about things so that when we do have the hearing, it's very productive to help us come to a decision. This is a decision that obviously has to be made. But as we know, it's going to take some time, but it's going to take some money. And we want to try and get it done as quickly as possible, going back to what Bobby said. Safety is our primary concern for that road, whether it's safety just driving at night and going too far to one side and ending up with a car down in the ditch that's got to be pulled out, or an emergency vehicle trying to get up that hill on both sides. So, thank you.
okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
for your time.
Okay. Appreciate you coming. See you. Have a good night. We'll have you back.
Yeah, no, it's good. I read some stuff.
I could say that 1, 2, and 3 have been done almost every year for the
It's
last
just
20 years.
not an easy decision.
No, it's not. There's plenty of stuff.
Particularly down at the bottom toward the private school.
This many
Maybe
cars.
the ones we put in are larger than.
They're still washing.
No,
It's gone, and I can tell you that it's I don't know how many years ago, but on the Chestnut Ridge side, that fabric was put down to try to stabilize that base years ago. It didn't. No, because I remember the fabric going down, and it didn't stabilize it. No, fire truck full of water. That's the worst area, and cars have gotten stuck, because I had to pull my daughter out one time, and the tow trucks were over. But yes, if they put down that stone like that, it disappears because there's no bottom. And they have tried to crown it, and it still doesn't work.
We're still in a meeting.
Next time you come,
Does he
we're
have
at,
to make any other presentations?
Yeah, he wants to talk to us about,
we have a seasonal stream, which you would not have seen, that feeds into the
he
Mill.
wants to talk to us about, The culvert bridge.
About what, Joe?
Just after the blind spot coming down, there's a pond on the side, and there's a yellow farmhouse.
Canby Road.
We have a vernal pond, and I have
Old Summer Canby.
actually walked it. Right now, our stream is going crazy. It wasn't there when you were there, and it connects to the Millbrook. So if there's something with funding with water, that could be figured in, I think.
Excuse me, folks, we've got a continuation of the meeting for another issue, so.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I saw the Albert here in the
Oh, okay,
audience.
all right, but another letter.
Okay.
Just when you need to sit.
Sure, yeah, I can sit. Oh, man.
Put you right in the hot seat there, Dan.
I'm always.
I know.
Good, thank you.
Very
Yeah.
helpful.
Really good.
I do apologize, I haven't got.
That's all right.
figured out
That's
the-
all right.
Yeah.
a little bit better.
That's fine.
That's why I encourage everybody to look at it and.
I wonder, is it helpful? I mean, people ask good questions tonight. Like, I thought the traffic study was interesting to look at that projection. I think the cost projection is a helpful thing for us
I'm
to
meeting with
understand.
Skylar tomorrow.
Something
at
you
9
might want to
o'clock.
consider is you want to have a public hearing of sorts, maybe open comment period, something where comments in writing could be open. Essentially, it's a public hearing. You do
Yep.
that anyway, but some sort of period of time, on one day, you just, a regular meeting, you open that public hearing so that people can then submit officially anything in writing, just prepare for it, and then we have an actual presentation where everyone can show, something like that.
Yep.
We want you to come back when we have that public meeting. Yes.
And I do think, to Gary's earlier point, since we are in this process and it's going to take some time, it would be terrific if you can go back during some of these crazy, we had that freeze and then it's warm again and then,
Yeah.
during,
Well, even
The
the
spring
lady here
thaw.
was saying,
I mean, you
the
wouldn't
stream
believe it.
across from her house is
Maybe you
flowing
would.
like mad now.
And maybe
Yeah.
you've seen
And
it.
he hasn't seen that.
right, okay.
I've been told all of the different things that happen. I haven't seen it in person. I've never even seen pictures of it. So,
Yeah.
But in any of your engineering
Yeah.
experience, if you've seen, yeah.
It's interesting. I live on a dirt road, and our driveway is right off of it, and the town built the drainage
Soil, yeah.
and sort of prepared the end of it, and it's a different animal. It really has been very effective. But, there's not many cars that drive on it either, so there's only a few houses on the road, but.
One of the things, the reason I brought up a lot of the areas in the Midwest and any place in the whole of this country where almost every single road is a gravel road, it is a science. And their
Right.
DPWs have this thing down pat. They know what to do. They know how to take care of it. There's a whole system. And every single thing I've researched, everything I've read, drainage. And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting that water off that road is so.
I have another, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Like, when we do a traffic study, if there's a minimum or a maximum amount of traffic that's on it, like say we have like 1 million cars, is it recommended for the amount of traffic that goes on what surface that it should be on? Do you see what I mean?
There is a form that with the traffic study, we could easily fill out the form. It's a whole formula figuring out if you don't have 1 million.
No,
At
we're
most,
not,
there's
but-
about 400 to 500 trips per day that are going through that road. On average, just looking at the other roads around what we anticipate, you take that number and you then multiply that by the expected cost of repairs for a gravel road, expected cost of repairs for a paved road, and then what the cost would be to take a gravel road to a paved road. And once you get through that formula, it does come up with a recommendation.
So there's
Is
a
it
formula,
time to pave
yeah.
or is it not?
Okay.
And that can be done, but what's needed is the traffic.
The traffic.
But isn't it also, so like, from what I understand, that the people use that as a cut through, and as you said, it was intended as a country road, and so, I don't know, like the Taconic, trucks aren't allowed in the Taconic, and obviously you need to have service trucks be able to go to people's houses, but in your experience, I mean, I guess we talked about signs, and you mentioned the permit. system.
All that is, I will admit, that's probably, that won't stop everything, but what it does do is it makes more awareness that the road cannot be traveled by all normal
Right,
traffic, that it is not designed or rated for that heavy traffic. Case in point, loggers. That is
Right.
some of the heaviest traffic that will ever go through a road, and that can completely damage
Yeah.
portions of the road. If that's going to happen, the posting doesn't mean you can't have those vehicles on the road. All the posting is it is a mechanism in which the town can have a permit process.
Right.
Somebody would need to get a building permit. What are you doing? You're clearing all of this. You're going to have loggers. There needs to potentially be a permit to allow those trucks there.
right. And maybe a bond, you know, to make, right? If these
Exactly.
loggers are going or whatever.
If you damage this, there's a bond in which you can then act on and repair your road, or there is a permit value that goes into a repair fund. But any of those mechanisms, I do have to defer to what the town does on that, but those are mechanisms that could help. Does it solve every issue? No, but
Right.
it does bring awareness that those things are needed.
And-
And as far as what the one member of the public brought up about regular service vehicles,
Yeah,
those are things that normally, under those circumstances, you do have to permit. You would never require a school bus. to
Right,
have
of
a
course.
service.
Right,
So
yeah.
you know,
There are
but
exceptions.
I mean, in response to the school bus thing, for a student, Millbrook School Bus Company, their policy is they don't go up a dirt road or a gravel driveway, period. They just don't. They don't do it on they won't, you have to meet them. You have to drive your car and meet them. So, you know, I don't know if we can address the school bus
never knew
thing.
Yeah, I
Really?
think.
They won't, you have
never
to
knew that.
drive, well,
I
that's
think
their
our one
new,
here does too.
they're worried about, so
Yeah,
they'll call and
stop.
say, you have to meet them at the bottom of the,
If I may ask, in that particular case, would then the residents are the residents then expected to have to bring their children
to the school bus. Yeah.
to the school?
To the
So
Mhm.
the school bus might stop at a paved
It's
road.
right, it stops at the bottom of my road, and then the family at the top of our
It's a
road,
gathering.
they come down, and then, so, you know, because they just won't, they don't want to get stuck on any dirt road. It's just sort of, they've obviously
Right.
gotten stuck in dirt
Well,
roads.
Yeah.
in my grade school days, even living on a
Yeah.
blacktop road, all the kids in the area had to meet at a certain spot.
Yeah.
Those four-in-hand horses didn't get stuck.
Yeah, I know, it's so one of the notes that I made while you were talking about, you know, the states that have this, you know, manage this, and maybe they don't have as much traffic, maybe in Kansas as we do on Calern, but I'm interested, like maybe there are, Colorado, for example, because you do get extreme weather in Colorado, you know, if there is some sort of training or person or expert, or maybe a resident would want to pay for that, to bring it in to work with our highway department, to give us the tools, or maybe just the drainage is the
To tell you the
result.
truth, yeah, one of the things, I believe it is Adams County, is the one that I had mentioned here. Yes, Adams County, that is in Colorado. The reason I had mentioned that is their website, their DPW website, they put up YouTube videos, they show every repair, and they're going to town, going through all of their gravel roads. They have all of this information that are up there. One of the things I was thinking is just reaching out to that office just to ask, get more information. I think there might be opportunities out there where there are people who are regularly every day taking care of nothing but gravel roads who
Yeah.
could bring some expertise in. But I do think that a lot of what we've presented is the basic
Yeah.
topics are exactly what they would be bringing up.
Right, because there are other, besides Calern, there's one other road that comes to mind that does get some of those, the rivets, it's deep hollow, at certain parts that becomes difficult. To, you know, you can get down it, but it's just, you know, your car is covered in mud kind of thing. So I'm just curious if there's other stuff we can look at and how we're managing.
Other roads,
Yeah, just like holistically altogether. So that's great that this county might have some knowledge it can pass, since they seem to be.
Yeah, they definitely would if, you know, given a call and they'd be interested in talking. I imagine there are probably others, and then there's also just like AASHTO and the other organizations and societies that are out there that look at these things, produce the white papers, do the studies. There's all of that resource too that can be looked in for more backup information on all these things.
So you wanted to talk to us about Oak Summit, is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
I wanted to go through, today we finished, we did a couple iterations of the cost on the bridge.
Yeah.
Let me first just back up by saying what we've accomplished so far. We did our traffic study, we did our evaluation of the structure, and I did a hydraulics report. We also received a bunch of files from the highway department on prior studies that have been done. Those are extremely useful, not only for the application, I believe, but just the background and history of how long it's been that the project's been known about. And it was a good basis for us to take what our numbers were compared to another engineer who independently had also done work and see how they compare.
Sure.
The hydraulics worked out very similar. The other firm that had worked on things were not doing it for a DOT style project, and we had to add in some of the requirements that DOT looked for, sizing a culvert. After that was done, both consultants, us and it's the Chazen companies who did the other study. The Chazen company came up with, in one of the reports, a structure that would go from the 18-foot span to a 35-foot span. When we did our hydraulics, we came up with needing at least a 38-foot span. So we're very close to where they are with the adjustment needed for the DOT. But a 38-foot span, everything that entails and what that costs, brought our number up to the cap for a culvert project. So the cap per this program is 1.5 million. That is all costs. That is a design fee, that is a construction fee, construction inspection, right-of-way takings, the whole gamut. Our cost came in at the best estimate we could give you, 1.7 million when everything was all in. We went and we trimmed everything that we could, and what we came up with is two options. The DOT does allow the application to be moved forward with a number higher than the cap. However, per their frequently asked questions, they do say that there would be an extra level of review and scrutiny put on the application as they look through it. All of the people reviewing really have to take it as a case by case if it would qualify for that. The other option is if we have a local share of money that brings the grant underneath the 1.5 million, and that extra added step of review I don't believe would be taken. So what I've done is we basically came up with an application. I'll give you, I don't have enough copies for everybody, but maybe just to kind of share. What I would direct you to is the third page where all the costs are done out. And
Now the 38, just quick question on the 38 foot.
yes,
Is that because of the amount of water?
yes. There's
Okay.
a lot of water going there.
Okay.
A lot more.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe.
So you see our local farmer that lives upstream
Mhm.
a little ways, or downstream, I'm sorry.
East to the west
Downstream.
entrance of
Yeah.
that road.
So anyway,
Yes, okay.
He goes over it all.
he loves the flooding that happens every once in a while because it puts silt in his farm
Mhm.
fields.
Right, is it right?
Yeah, and so he's against putting a big, huge bridge in. But on the other hand, when I reached out to him to ask him to write a letter for us, he reminded me that during the summer months, there are months and weeks where he crosses that bridge with tractors, with manure and hay wagons, and
Yeah.
up to 50 times a day.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a traffic study, you almost have to figure that in
So
there.
we did our traffic study.
Yeah.
We, in December, had 20% truck traffic. That is an extremely large amount for a road like this. And that was during December. Normal truck traffic, to give you an idea, the roads we were just talking about, where Klarn exit and entrance from, are 6 and 8. And those are New York State DOT road and a county road, so 6 to 8% trucks. This road had 20%, and that was during winter. So if there's more traffic during the summer,
Oh, it's a lot more. Well, the farm traffic.
farm traffic, exactly. Going over there.
So getting back to this particular issue, originally we classified it as a bridge, and we were looking for monies to help a bridge,
Mhm.
but it's a culvert. So that puts us in a different category.
Yeah.
And the cap for that category is limited below what the projected cost is. So we're looking to make up that difference.
Yep, and the dollar amount that I had come up with was 165,526.
So we either have to become creative, or is there an ability for us to, does this qualify for CHIPS?
I think we need to just dive into it a little bit more. It could, but again, that's taken from your CHIPS money elsewhere.
Yeah, so
So
is that a 2-year, but when you're doing these projects, no matter how quickly you project that you're going to get it done, there's always the things that occur and it extends out.
Yes.
Is this depending on when we start, is this a 2023 project? Is it a 2024 project? Is it an overlap project where you can tap from both years to make up the difference? I don't know.
So our projection right now is that the project will be let, which is meant that you put it out for advertisement for a contractor, then review, and then eventually put a bid out onto it. That letting is October 2024. That means the real construction season is 2025.
Okay.
At the best
I'm
case
looking,
scenario with no snags.
if MIG grant, I don't think they would. Mary, would a MIG grant ever be applicable here?
I doubt it.
I'm looking to see.
I'm afraid to say that I think we almost have to, the town would, if they're putting up 1.5 million, is it unreasonable for the town to put up 10%?
Right.
Through budgeting or bonding?
No.
So today, we decided not to go with the culvert option, and we put an abutment on either side and called it a bridge.
The replacement will be a bridge. Right now, as it exists, the span, which is the distance between the water edge and water edge, is 18 foot. That classifies it as a culvert. It's 2 feet shy of being classified as a bridge. So anything with a span of 20 foot and greater is a bridge. And
Okay.
that's the little catch here.
So we're lacking what, 2 feet?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You're
Like a foot on either side.
2 feet, yeah.
Does that help with funding if we said we have to build a bridge?
No, in this
It doesn't.
particular case, under this program, there are numerous cases where municipalities are in the same exact situation. They have a culvert that some may be 14-foot culvert, but it washes out all the time
Right.
and needs to be bridged.
Right.
So they have a situation where they're going from a culvert to a bridge.
All right, so
This is
this
kind of what we ran
particular,
into on Stanford Road.
this particular application, but what about any other applications? Like we have to build a
Somebody's
bridge?
upstairs moving something around.
Yeah, I was
Do you
just,
see what I mean? Like, is there funding elsewhere? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
we're sort of,
for the
yeah,
match,
for the
match.
yeah.
I would have to.
Do you
leave
know what I
that to-
mean?
Yeah,
Like, we seem to be limited to ourselves because we're calling it a culvert, right? And we lack 2 feet.
We're not calling it a culvert. It mathematically measures out to a culvert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I get it, but it's, for all intents and purposes, it's a bridge. It's a bridge being built, yeah?
the bridge will be built.
Yes.
As a replacement.
Exactly.
But it is a culvert today, and
Right.
the way that the program works is whatever is today.
Yeah,
is
this
whatever
program.
is- Yeah.
I just wanted to know if there was another,
So what I would
because
say.
of the technicality involved. Do you
Yeah.
see what I mean?
What I would say on the local share is that
That's too
The-
bad.
what I'm looking for guidance on and what we would like to do moving forward,
Mhm.
it needs to be a commitment that the money would be there.
Mhm.
If it comes from a grant, if it comes from a funding source,
Yeah.
it comes from a
Yes.
bond,
Yeah.
is there a way to have the local share where wherever that money source
For
is?
2025, yeah,
Yes,
I think so.
yes, there
Okay.
is.
Yes.
so,
For that amount.
so
Yeah.
the MIG grant, part of it here, it includes broadly, it says address health and safety issues, but it says improvements designed to mitigate flooding and improve resiliency to contain drainage. So
If that, flooding is a no.
Is an
thing there.
issue,
Yep.
so-
And part of the design parameters that we have to follow for DOT does not solve the flooding, what we're supposed to do. I don't want to get into too many technicalities. When we talk about storms, you've probably heard of a 100-year storm.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's also a 50-year storm. Statistically, you can come up with any year storm and what the value is. What DOT requires is that any structure you build, the 50-year storm passes perfectly underneath it. The 100-year storm in this particular case needs to safely pass. It is allowed to build up on the far side. You would still have a situation of flooding. Any of these solutions does not stop a flooding issue, but it does help. So it does not completely stop the flooding, but it does help.
This 30, whatever, how many feet?
38 would be the
38 proper width for a 2-lane highway.
Mhm.
Will we encumber onto any property both left and right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we will have to work with those property owners.
This particular area, this is, I think it was your question, this is a user road.
Yes.
So in order to build this and in order to qualify for everything that is required under DOT, there is a fee taking that is required for the area where this bridge will be and all of the work area of permanent structure outside. Anything else outside of that permanent structure area, you can get an easement for. There is in this proposal 1 easement and 1 fee taking.
Okay.
Have you received all the letters that you want? And like, how many letters that you received in support? Do you know?
Right now, I have the one from the new county executive,
Yeah.
and that's official and assigned. I did receive a copy of a Word document that went to the senator for the area,
Okay.
but that was just for them, for their office to put onto letterhead. And then
Oh, they sent it back. I
did?
I forwarded it to you.
Oh,
So
perfect.
Hinchy's office, they're signed and
Yeah.
delivered, so they're
Okay, so
in.
that's
Yeah.
the second.
Yeah.
Barrett's office was looking for a quote of money.
Yes, and that was what I was asked. I'm actually in
Okay.
contact with somebody in their office, and I'm having this conversation
Did you-
so I can tell them what the grant money is
Yeah.
as a put in the letter.
You receive one from Boss Haven Farm, from the farmer?
I have not, I don't know if one's come to the town, but
Oh.
I have
You know,
not through-
You know
So I guess what
Kathleen
I'm-
is Kathleen's keeping track, Bob. She's got a
Oh.
whole list, so
Oh,
maybe
okay.
she showed it to me that she was
And
just.
she did say that she was gonna assemble everything she got and send it to me.
Okay, great.
I
So-
guess, okay, you haven't received that yet.
I'll
Okay.
check with her
All right.
in the
Yeah,
morning.
because maybe if there's other ones that she hasn't gotten that we
And
expect to get.
Gary's the point person on it with his email address.
So you have,
Okay.
all right,
So,
so it's on its way.
And I think we were still waiting, she's going to get a push down to
Betsy?
Unionville.
Yeah,
We still haven't received anything, so,
from Betsy,
yeah.
has she been contacted?
yes, her assistant said she's sending it. Kathleen told me tonight.
Would it be
So-
beneficial to get it from that fire department down there that's right at that stream?
It might be a little too late.
Okay, I was gonna say the fire chief, obviously, would be
Our-
very interested in
yeah.
that access.
What,
Our chief sent a letter, just so you know.
what email address are you using for me? Do you know? Because the
I
one,
was given one, and then Kathy gave me another.
she gave you the other
And
one.
second one is
That's the
that
one,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go with, Yes.
I may be a little ahead of everybody here. What happened, what do you do during construction? Do you create another temporary bridge or something?
No, they have to go around.
Right now, the proposal would be, it would be closed while the old structure is demolished and the new structure is put up. We do have an option in design to come up with an alternative that would allow for another method of that detour. The way that the program is, how we have to figure out what the funding is just a straight, what is there right now, take it out, put something brand new.
Right.
But there is an alternative where we can realign slightly the road. You can build the new structure to the side of the existing structure, and you could keep the old structure and that old portion of the road open to prevent a long detour. And you go through a whole alternative analysis and design, and you have to compare the costs, and as long as that's feasible and it fits within the grant, you can definitely do that. As
Okay.
far as this is concerned right now, we just do, the whole thing gets
Yep.
closed, and there's a 6 mile
We'll
detour.
have to
for a
sit
short
with
time.
Tim. If that bridge comes out and there's nothing there to get across, he's gotta get across 50 times a day. So we'll have to meet with him.
What's the time period on a build on something like that?
It truly depends on the contractor you get and when the project is awarded for construction. We can do our best to work within those limits, and there are always options for temporary bridges that cost more. It brings the construction cost up to put a temporary bridge in if it's needed, but if it's just for farm traffic, there could be an option to.
Maybe
look
there's
at
an
that.
alternative on his land.
We can't.
Well, I
leave them-
believe that he could utilize his land that's on both sides of that, on 3 sides of that road. He could use his own
And we
We
property
did
to
Stanford
get,
Road, what was that, 7 months, 8 month project?
no,
No, not at all.
they got that done quick.
What was it, like 3 or
Stanford?
4 months?
Maybe it was 4 months, but it was a spring,
It was,
summer.
they finished it before school opened.
Correct. That was the deadline, September 1st.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was like we started right around end of June.
Yep.
And they
Yeah.
finished.
Right.
and we had some,
Good weather.
Like in your
well, we had good
design,
weather,
like
but we also had some
prefab or
big
anything like
rains.
that? Would prefab come into consideration to
That's actually
shorten
what
the?
we're yes, that we're, the prefab system we're suggesting is a pre-stressed, we call them boarded slab
Yep.
system. So you build the new abutments
Mhm.
and then what becomes the bridge itself, the spanning, they come in pieces right off the truck,
Okay,
you put them
and then-
down, you connect everything together. There's
And
no-
pave it
That
up.
would speed it up, yeah.
That's speed it up.
Okay.
Sounds like Stanford Road all over again.
Yep.
Only a bigger span.
Yeah.
Leslie, back to the mid-grant, I believe the fire company received about 200,000
Yeah.
for their project. So that might cover
That might cover the difference.
the difference.
Oh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but isn't that allotted for their,
Well,
No,
yes,
no,
but
no,
I'm
no,
saying,
moving forward.
if we were to apply.
right,
for-
yeah,
Apply for
yeah,
another
yeah,
one.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
That might
totally.
be able to close that gap.
But I
Yeah.
think we have like,
I just have to, apparently the applications come out in April and they're due in May, but I'm not sure if it's every year. And the woman that I spoke with wasn't sure either with the county. So maybe that changes with the new executive, but
Correct, yeah.
I will, I'm on Grant Watch.
think it's
The
definitely
grant
worth-
investigator. I will see what we can find
worthwhile.
there.
So basically what I would need tonight is that if there's commitment that local share could be,
No, no.
then the numbers that we have in here are good, and the next step that I would need is a signature from you on the signature page, and
Yeah.
then we're able to put everything together tomorrow and make the submission on Friday.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good with it?
Yeah.
Yes, Dan, I have one
Which-
quick question. The numbers that you have for the roads, that's just your experience. You talked to a road paving company or a gravel company. How did you come up with the,
Those are all
Since
from
it's-
DOT. Every
right,
single
you
one.
said DOT. Okay, so that's,
Yep, so that experience comes from what we know goes into these projects for
oh, right,
building the road.
okay.
And then everything is itemized, and the prices are all DOT prices, and again, those are all weighted average rates, so the prices we have here are as recent as possible for what is expected to be the unit
Who knows
cost.
what's
on the
gonna
job.
happen in the future prices.
The signature page,
Yeah.
exactly.
Can we get rid of your gas stoves?
It's right here.
This one,
That's the
Gary
signature
signs
page.
here?
Yes,
Yeah.
What page is it?
that's should be near the last page, right? Yeah, and I just need one of them with original ink, and I can take that back and do what we need to do.
So I just need a motion for someone to authorize. Gary to sign it.
A motion.
So,
Yeah.
Second.
Dan,
You
I'm
want a
here.
copy of that, right, Mary?
Yes.
Just please make sure
This
you
is not
change my
signed.
email
Yeah, I do
address,
need to,
okay?
yeah, that went in earlier today, and I got the new one. so
Okay.
that will be
We'll have to
updated.
sign
So that one's signed.
Bobby, you'll have to sign that one too, so we
No.
have a signed copy in the file.
Mary said doesn't have to be signed.
It's okay.
Doesn't have to be signed?
No, because it's just.
I
I'll
can
get it.
sign it, it's not a
Well,
big
she's got it in
deal.
the minutes.
Once they submit, I'll get a copy.
That's what I was gonna say, is
Yeah.
the full PDF copy, it's gonna be coming over.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Okay.
Wow.
Wow. All
Well,
right.
that was,
It's
Wow.
recreation upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Typical.
so,
yeah, no, this has been great. I really appreciate you guys
Yeah.
coming
Yeah,
down.
for
Thank you
sure.
very
Yeah.
much.
yeah, with all.
Thank you so much.
Back to Killen Road, what's the next, we decide what we want to do and then schedule,
Yeah, the
Is that
public,
the
yeah,
idea?
yeah.
is that where we
And
go
then
from
we'll
there?
find out when you're,
Yeah, I think what we
you
will
guys
do
are-
for you is we'll make more site visits
Yeah.
next month or so. We'll go out a couple times. If we need to make any amendments, we'll let you know immediately.
And
And
come
send
back
you-
with some of those projections.
Yeah.
And then we can talk, schedule the meeting, and then move forward.
No problem, we just have to find $7 million.
How will you do the,
Or
Yes, the
limit
maintenance
to
assessment.
1%.
I'm going to work with Joe to understand what the normal
What there's-
maintenance
because
is,
if-
and then I'm also going to research, like what we said, different counties, what they have. There are programs out there that are just standard maintenance
Okay.
items. See what it is that the town has for, I think Joe said he has 2 graders.
Yeah.
And just knowing what that material is. He already has stockpiled material. I can take that into
Yeah.
consideration, but it's gonna be back and forth with the highway superintendent.
because, you know, you probably have some reference, right, for what the maintenance would be once you have, let's say, 1 through 3 installed, right? It wouldn't be the same as what it is now, because now he's having to
There's
do
more, yeah.
the repairs plus that. So
Right.
we're doing all, you know, let's presuming we do the repairs, we do the structural issues, we make it deeper in certain parts, we do drainage. I'm just trying to understand 1 through 3
Mhm.
with the maintenance piece going forward. And then I guess the maintenance with 4 versus 5.
5 is completely different. When you have a
Right.
paved road, you're
Yeah.
in a different.
The maintenance, yeah,
The maintenance,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, you have.
Everything.
You still have to
minerals,
repave though,
you
right?
You
At
do
certain-
have
yeah.
that, you have that maintenance for sure, but the washouts, the different things that you have, those, I mean,
Go
when
away.
when water runs on pavement, it doesn't erode away. the pavement.
I think the devil on that
Yeah.
road is the drainage. I think if we can get that drainage right,
Absolutely.
and we look at number 3, if we can get to 3, and take a serious look at the rest of it, as long as
That's my feeling.
seasonal things, maybe, but not
What's that, Rob?
emergency
Because of the
seasonal
cost,
things.
going 1
And who
through
knows,
3
maybe some
makes the most sense.
Purdue University or
We have
somebody
to
will come
go
up with
through
new
3 to get to
surfaces.
4
Yeah,
or
but
5
What I
anyway.
will say on the
Right.
cost, because I know the costs come up often, we're using DOT. These are DOT numbers. I have spoke with Joe, who has spoke with people who do this work. I think the costs that you would get in a competitive bid would be lower, especially if it's just the town going directly.
But is that still with the prevailing wage and all of that that we
You
have
still
to?
have, yes, you still have to do those things. All
Yeah.
of those contract items would still have to be included. The caveat I will give you to that is if there is a program giving funding, especially a federal program, you might be required to do things a little bit differently that will drive the costs up. Just keep that in mind.
And then
Right.
also, like, for the surface, right? Paved surface keeps the ground, right? We don't have to, but then if we don't have a paved surface, we still have to
You have to always
maintain and try to keep the ground to make the drainage work properly. So those are things we have to think about as well. It's one thing to build, it's another to maintain.
I mean, I
And the easiest maintenance is a paved roadway.
the travel,
That's
you
the
know,
way
if you
it
travel
should
all
be.
our dirt roads, you'll see that edge is not easy to get rid of, at least for our guys. I don't know, maybe there's a different grader blade you can get.
Well, that's kind of what I'm interested in this Adams County, Colorado thing, right? Because
I will say, when you look at their videos, the shoulder edge that I
Yeah,
remember seeing,
right.
it is a drop off. There is no.
There's
if
no
a
way,
grader
there's
were-
no,
Yeah, if a grader were to come through, it would just push off into, there's no place for, that mound to really even develop, because it is a the drop into the ditch.
you're saying like their
Oh,
drainage is, the drain is actually deeper?
Their blading is different probably.
Okay.
Where they take away that, like when you're doing the top of a cake,
Yep.
and you go around, you kind of round it off with the blade, they probably tilt that a little bit so that
Okay.
everything is forced down.
Everything is forced down.
Yeah.
And I think they do have a section where.
So you don't have that crown around it.
Right. They have a
Okay.
section here that I'm not drawing this to scale, but they have a section here that might be steeper, and it's
Right.
just pushing it out that way.
But it is dirt and it's stone that's going down in there,
Yeah.
but it's getting rid of that rim that
Even
then
if you-
directs the water back into the road.
even if you grade once a year though,
Yeah.
and you try to keep that crown, that's a lot of material being pushed into a drain. I don't know how big the drain is gonna be, but-
Well, that's their job.
and then we gotta
Yeah.
dig the
The
drain,
drain.
and then we gotta dig the drain out.
The
year.
ditches need maintenance.
They gotta be
silt, and they have to be maintained.
Yeah.
I
There
think
is
too-
always
Yeah,
maintenance.
it's gonna
I
be
think too,
full of
speaking
leaves
to the
and
property
dirt.
owners and working with them too, try and prevent some of that little flush that comes off some of those.
Yeah.
That is a question, and, you know, I think what we were getting at there is there are certain driveways that are paved, that were paved after the fact, right? From and that runoff is creating a big, you
More
know,
volume.
more volume of water that it's not being absorbed. Is there like grading or different structures that we could either assist or, you know,
Yeah,
how can we work with property owners to help us?
The existing ones are tough to do. They're an existing condition. As we move with a design, you got to accommodate an existing condition. You can always approach the homeowner, let them know that there's an issue, and see as part of a project within your right of way, can you do a repair to the beginning section of their
Like the skirt?
driveway? Yeah, do something a little different. Going up their whole driveway, different story. You probably don't want to get into that, but doing something within your right of way, you can take a look at for existing. Future ones, what I would say throughout other communities in New York that we work with, do you have an MS4? Is this an MS4 community? Probably not, because nobody recognizes the term.
Except for
No.
Howard.
Like,
Howard, what are we talking
for
about?
the speedies permit?
It says no.
Yeah, I don't think we are.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We're not.
Positive.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So in that particular case, through building permit, some of the things that you can do is you can have requirements that driveways have to, that the drainage from a driveway can't go onto a public road, that
Okay.
whoever designs it has to bring that water back away from the
Sheets
public
it.
road.
Yeah.
That is, I can show you numerous communities that do things like that.
That's what I was
That's a
thinking about
code.
as we're
That's
looking at
what-
our,
yeah.
looking at our code to have that in that going forward, so
Yeah.
we don't
Having that.
have that
having-
issue elsewhere, we can prevent it, or at
Yeah.
least get that then.
Yeah. We could probably think of questions all night, but like, I have one about, so you put the drainage ditches in, and every so far on a downhill, it has to go somewhere,
Mhm.
right? And what if the landowner says, you can't put that on my,
So.
Well, that's what I was asking about the discharge earlier,
Yeah.
right? We
right, exactly, you asked the
just have
question.
to find a way to
Right.
move it.
One place that highway law does help, and I'm not an attorney, so I would definitely defer
Yeah.
to an attorney to help with this,
Yeah.
but as I understand it, if water is leaving a public roadway and it's leaving in a location that it has been for a very long time,
So you could
that
fix
is
it.
the way that it goes. And there is case law, you can actually look it up, and I have a,
I think Joe
I-
told me that once.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
have
almost
a-
like eminent domain.
Yeah.
It is, and I have a packet that came from a bunch of law cases that go back into the 1800s in New York on this exact thing. One of the examples was brought up is a farm field that was far off of the roadway. There was water that was going out to that point. That whole area got filled in, the water backed up onto the road. The town had the right, after the lawsuits and everything, they did it anyway, but the town had the right to go into the property where that block was,
Yeah.
get rid of it, because that was the natural course of the drainage that had been blocked off, that then was harming the town-owned property. Where I would just say is, if there is a point of relief for the water, and that has always been the point of relief, we go there, and that
Yeah.
is the point that you drain
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
And then if it becomes a legal issue.
Perhaps
then
there's easements.
Getting an
established.
easement, if there isn't already one, is always a good option. There might be ones, which is why the survey definitely comes into
Yeah.
consideration to see where those are. I know of at least one on that road, having seen the map.
Oh,
So there's.
Yeah.
yeah, so there's.
And the other thing that Joe mentioned, I know you guys mentioned too, there are sections along that north side, which you're referring to the north side, where the utilities, the underground utilities are gonna be a little bit of an issue because they are out into our road, and we're gonna have to address that with the homeowner.
There was some question about sort of the steepness on the sides when you do the drainage. That just is what it is. I mean, right, there are plenty of roads in our town where there's,
Yeah.
it goes off, you just have to, is there,
You design, we have codes, and one of the things I should have talked about, you had mentioned that the item of safety, and as I kind of gave some thought to it, anything that gets designed has to be designed to the codes that we use, the highway design manuals, ASHTO, whatever it might be. Those are standards for the safety reasons. So anything that gets proposed, the slopes have to meet that, the distances have to meet
Gotcha.
that. There are ways to have non-conforming, non-standard features. You have to justify those. When we do it for a DOT, if you can't make the road wide enough, you have to then go through a justification because it's not meeting a code. We try to eliminate as many of those as possible, but as long as the road is as best as possible done to code, or if it can't be, you sign it so that the warnings are there. If you can't make a curve the right way, you sign it all over the place. And you put the warning signs 15 miles per hour when you're going around that curve, doing everything that you are required to do, so that
Right.
if it isn't up to standard, then you're warning that it's a non-standard feature.
So that's what we also have to pay attention to too, is the proper signage that we do not have on that road, right?
I'm going back to your point about the survey. That's not part of 1, 2, and 3. That's separate recommendations. I can't quite remember.
I didn't actually include it in one of the recommendations. Anything that you go forward with a design, the truth is the basic option, alternative 1, I think that could almost completely be done by town forces. You wouldn't necessarily need a design, you just need the location of all of those problems.
Right.
I think anything going forward after alternative 1, you truly need a design, like designing the drainage ditches, making sure that they're sized appropriately, that's an engineer's design. And at that point, alternative 2, you need to know where your property lines are.
Right.
You really need to survey.
Yep.
Especially
What's
where it
your
narrows.
turnaround time right now for survey work?
If I may get back to you on that, just because I don't know the surveyor's schedules. And I was also going to offer, this is going to be public, so I'm sure my bosses, if they read the meeting minutes, will love this. If there is another option for survey that you want to go, just get the survey. The survey is more important. Knowing where your property lines is more important. We can definitely give you, in fact, I think we had already given a cost at one point in time for where it is. If there's another option, I would prefer you to get what you need done the right way, so that you have it fully from start to finish, know where all the property lines are.
It probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get a cost estimate on it anyway, and then we'll whether we do anything.
Yeah.
We should.
Well, that
No,
just sounds
right,
like that's
it
the
would-
level set, right? We need to understand that no matter what we choose,
Right.
right? And we need
Especially
to
where it's
understand the
narrowed down,
traffic, no
where
matter
that
what
narrows.
we'd have to get all the information still on that
And-
list of items that
Yep.
you gave us at the beginning,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and you may find that you own everything that you need to. You may find that there's a subject parcel I'm a little suspicious about that they do have that user road situation right in the middle. There's an older farm property. It is a tax map on both sides of the road. That's usually an indicator that the road was some farm road and it's a user road section. They own all the way through it. If that's the case and you need to widen the road, you have to do a fee taking or some sort of permanent easement. Those are the things you need to know about.
Okay.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you so
Thank you.
much,
Yeah, no
Dan.
problem.
Thank you.
Dan, thank you.
Yeah, no
Thanks,
problem.
Dan.
thank you, sir.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Dan.
it.
Sorry.
Sure we'll see you again.
No,
soon.
not a bother. No, it's better- believe me.
Motion to close?
You want to make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
second.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right.
All right,
Thank
6
you all.
o'clock tomorrow
So
night.
we'll be seeing you again.